Hello all. I'm going to have a quick talk about the Orville Season 3, Episode 6, Twice in a Lifetime. It's a relatively complex but simple episode, and it was another incredible episode with a horrible element in it and slightly let down by the very end of the episode. Quick recap, and I'll probably talk about it as I recap it. It starts off at a party and everyone's having a good time. Gordon's singing. He seems to be singing a lot in this series. Or rather, he starts singing a lot from this point on. At one point in the party, Charlie asks him about a phone because she doesn't know what a mobile phone is, and he kind of shows her and he shows her the pictures, and it's a callback to a previous episode in Season 2. I'll put the episode in the video because I can't remember off the top of my head, but again, it was a fantastic episode about an archaeological dig that revealed a mobile phone, and he constructed a simulated program using the information on the phone to build this woman's life, and he fell in love with this woman who died hundreds of years earlier. Isaac and John have managed to get the time machine to work again, the one that was kind of present in the last couple of episodes of Season 2, where a past version of Kelly came to the present and it messed things up for 2 episodes. Another couple of great episodes. So they get it to work, and the Union say, well, you've got to get that hidden, you've got to get it to this base. They get an escort to keep it safe, but it turns out the Kalon have attacked the base and they're attacking them, and they want to get this time machine, because if you've got a time machine, your power is unlimited. So they're losing the battle and they decide to destroy the time machine. Gordon says he'll go and do it. As he's blasting it, he is suddenly zapped through time. The guys on the Orville realise what's happened because there was a spike in energy usage, and they find out that Gordon lived and died in the past. He had a life. This confuses them a little bit, because Union directives on time travel is that if you get lost in time, you clear off on your own in the middle of nowhere and have nothing to do with the world. Now that's obviously impossible, because anything you do in the world could have an impact. I mean, literally the old adage of stepping on a butterfly. In the last 2 episodes of the previous season, they kind of went on a predestination arc. In this one, they're saying that predestination, Terminator style time travel, isn't necessarily the way it goes, that also your Back to the Future style of time travel is possible, where your actions in the past will change the present. Whereas with the Terminator style, you just become part of the events of the present and always were part of the events of the past. So they find out Gordon's lived a life. They manage to figure out a way of getting to the past. They jury-rig the time machine. They basically nearly blow up the engines to get to the past, but they get there 10 years after Gordon had arrived, because he'd sent a message saying, come and rescue me. They managed to trace him, and he's working as a pilot, which is confusing to them. He's shocked to see them, because it's been 10 years for him. For them, it's been minutes. For him, it's been 10 years. And they talk about going back, and he seems reticent. He drives into a house and walks in the door, and there is this woman from this previous episode, the woman on the mobile phone, who is now married. I think there's 1 child and another one on the way. Obviously, Mercer and Kelly are a bit horrified by this, because Gordon was supposed to stay out of the way, not get involved, and he's got directly involved, and he's created children. And this is kind of the moral or the central dilemma of the episode, because this is Gordon's family, and he gets quite passionate and it's quite emotional, because he knows they want him to leave, and he's like, I'm not leaving. This is my family. I haven't changed anything. You're still here. The Union still exists. I'm not going. You abandoned me. I tried to stay out of the way. Have you ever tried to stay out of the way? Have you ever tried to be on your own? He said, I managed it for years, and then I just couldn't cope anymore. So he's got a family. He's got 1 child and another on the way. But Mercer and Kelly are trying to persuade him. So they then come back with Tala, and he's like, oh, is it going to be like this, is it? I'm not going. And he's just refusing, and he pulls a gun. There's a bit of toing and froing until you get to a moment where Mercer and Kelly sort of say, okay, fine, we'll leave you here. We figured out a way to make the time travel work, and we're going back 10 years, and we're going to pick you up after you arrived. Obviously, that is horrific. If you think about it, that's horrific. And Gordon is beside himself and enraged, despairing, frustrated, and it's a really good bit of acting there, which is surprising because he's usually always been the comic relief. So I was really impressed with his acting. But they're resolute. That's what they're going to do. And, Gordon's like, you're going to make these children not exist. You're killing my children. Yeah, but you won't know anything about it. They won't exist. They won't have existed. So there's a scene between Gordon and his wife and the child where he sort of says, we'll always be together. There's a way, we'll always be together. And then the next thing you know, the Orville goes back in time and picks Gordon up 3 months, I think they got, after he landed. He's happy to see them, thrilled to see them, and jumps on board and, yeah, you came back for me. I won't hit the end until I say this bit. So it's a smart, clever, fantastic episode with such a heavy philosophical and moral dilemma there. Because technically speaking, the children should never have existed, but they did exist. The coldness of them saying they're going to go back in time and just undo the existence of these children and undo his life. Because whilst they can deny that it never happened, because they went back in time and they picked him up earlier, so that never happened. That was an aberration. It didn't exist. But yeah, I absolutely hated that. And it's again, Orville not going with the happy ending. And they do this quite regularly. They've had a couple more happy endings in this series, like the last episode with Topa, but they're not going for the happy ending with this one. There's no, oh, it's all right, you can stay, you haven't done any damage or anything like that. It's like your child could end up destroying the world, could end up destroying the universe, could end up destroying everything. Who knows what your child will be? I forgot the subplot to this one, which was about Isaac and Charlie going off to try and find material that was required to make the engines work. And they have a little adventure, but it all leads up to a moment where there's not really a confrontation between them, but Isaac thanks Charlie for saving his life. Charlie doesn't say you're welcome, which confuses Isaac, and then there's not a confrontation, as I say, but Charlie makes it pretty clear what the woman who died in her place meant to her, and that she'll never forgive Isaac. This again is quite an interesting little moment, because I think if you'd guessed what was going to happen in this, you'd have had them going off together, having to find something, and somehow through working through obstacles and problems, they would have come together and found a new understanding of each other. But it doesn't happen. Charlie's attitude is exactly the same as it was at the start. She still hates Kalon and Isaac. And again, that's an example of this program not going the easy route, not going the obvious way with their stories. So getting to the final scenes, it's after Kelly and Ed have explained to Gordon what happened. And this is the bit I don't like about this episode, and it's a real shame because the denouement is just not right. Gordon's surprised, not upset, tells them they did the right thing. Ed just sort of says, yeah, you say that and I know I did, or I know I follow rules, but there's still 2 children that are not going to be born. And then they just decide, let's keep having drinks together, we miss this. It seems so underwhelming. I needed something more from Gordon. If you'd been told you had a life that had been taken away from you, regardless of whether it was the rules, that I would have thought would have had a major impact on you. Don't we all think about the life we didn't have? Don't we all occasionally think, if I turned left instead of right, to quote a Doctor Who episode? Don't we all think that? And he had that, and it was taken away. And I just would have expected a bigger reaction. At the least, I'd have expected him to go back to his room, pick up the mobile phone, and then just put it in a drawer. Like end of chapter. That would have had some element of closure, some element where you got a sense he felt something from what had happened. But it just ends with, let's keep having drinks. And again, Ed and Kelly, I don't feel like there's any real sense that they feel the weight of what they've done. When you think about what they considered the moral decision in the last episode with Topa, they've gone completely 180 with the moral decision in this episode. While what they did was right and correct, and probably, or entirely possibly, saved the entire future, they killed 2 children. Even if you argue, well, they never existed, they did exist. They saw them. They spent time with them. And now that child no longer exists. Never existed. That should weigh heavily on anybody. And it just feels like it's all a bit too underplayed, a bit offhand in the end. That one niggle aside, I thought it was a fantastic episode. And congratulations to the Orville for going there and, again, making the hard decisions, not having everything wrapped up nice and neatly. Thoroughly recommend this episode, although whether you'll need to watch it now, I don't know. Just a quick reminder that my comic Marked is available from my website. It's a 228-page graphic novel. Thank you very much for listening, and peace out.